Welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fernelli. I'm Chip Patterson, coming to you live at youtube.com/Cover3 and across the 24/7 Sports Facebook network. Thanks for hanging out. Jump in the chat. Smash that like button. It helps grow the show. It helps more people know about what we got going on here at Cover 3. A lot to get to today. It was a fairly busy Saturday in spring game action. We are going to run through some of the things that we have heard or saw or have read coming out of Nebraska, coming out of Florida State, where we, of course, had our celebrity coach, Danny Cannell, as one of the coaches. Brian McFadden, also CBS Sports HQ, was a part of that as well. Auburn, Clemson, and a very, very interesting game in Kentucky, and a few other headlines from all across the way. We also have some huge recruiting news. The Oregon Ducks pulling off a little bit of a Pac-12 stunner. We'll get into that. Georgia's got some transfer portal action with some players going out, or at least entertaining the option of going out. But we want to begin not necessarily with how DJ Uiagalelei looked, not necessarily with how Cade Klubnik looked, or the fact that neither offense was able to get much going against Clemson's defense. More on that in a bit. But instead, it was Dabo Swinney trending over the weekend, not for anything on the field in the orange-white game, but for a wide-ranging interview with ESPN's Chris Lowe, which allowed him to be able to dial in or express some of his thoughts on the leadership of college football, super conferences, name, image, and likeness, professionalization of college athletes, why coaches are paid so much. It was a lot, Tom. What stood out to you before we get into like what some of the reaction was? I just want to say, like, as you read this, how did you digest it?
You know what? This is going to come as a shock. But as I read the entire interview and article, I was a lot less bothered by it based on what everybody on social media was, just off of the one paragraph of text that was mostly the one shared about how much he and Nick Saban make compared to, like then going into the comparing it to Delta's CEO and baggage handlers, which I agree. He probably could have gone with a better comparison, because I feel like comparing Deshaun Watson to a baggage handler is probably not really what the actuality of the situation is. But if you read the entire interview, there's nothing new in there as far as that Dabo hasn't said a billion times already. The overall gist is he doesn't like where things are right now because there's like no rules. Everybody's just kind of free to do whatever the hell they want to do. Everybody's playing different rules. He's against the professionalization of college football, but while people take that as he's against players getting paid, that's not what he means. He's against players being paid exclusively, and that's all that matters. Like, the college aspect of it is no longer important. He just wants there to still be an emphasis on education while players are getting paid, because as he says many times in this interview and in answer to many questions, he's all for NIL. And he even goes out about how Clemson is one of 3 programs with over 1 million Twitter followers. So he's like, of course I'm into NIL, because I think Clemson has something to sell these kids if they want to come here. And he's thrilled because, as he mentions, 98% of these kids aren't going to be playing in the NFL. So if they have a chance to make money now while they're in college and they have the platform, he's all for it. But again, it's the comparison to Saban and Dabo and all the coaches making so much more money than the players, which I agree with everybody else in their reaction to that. But I think that too often when you look at scenarios like this, like, let's be honest, not many of the people who were bothered by what Dabo said would turn down a raise at their own job because somebody else in the company's making less money.
Yeah, the phrases that got highlighted and shared over and over on social media included him making reference to our capitalist society, that he is in favor of the free market. And the reason why he is paid so much money, the reason why Nick Saban is being paid so much, is because of the free market system that dictates what their value is. And that is being compared to the fact that college athletics is not a true free market society. And that's where some people are finding the contradiction. But dragging Dabo is like an old, I mean,
why are we asking Dabo to be an expert on capitalism and freaking market inefficiencies? Like, he's a football coach. Like, we're getting mad at the coach instead of the system.
why'd we have to come in here with all this sense? Why'd we have to come in here? We would get way more shares and likes if we came in with some outrage. But I think that asking Dabo Swinney to be this, Dabo Swinney has not even been on the top of the sport for that long. Dabo, this has been in the process of how long some of these other coaches have been around, the ones that are tenured, the ones that we do look to be the voice of college football, or to be some sort of overarching leader for the entire sport. Like Dabo Swinney was still promising a stadium full of pizza to his fans. And that was 7 years ago. You can't trust somebody who promised pizza that he wasn't sure he was going to be able to come up with, that he's going to be able to look past this. He is in charge of the Clemson football program and winning as many games as he can, of being able to recruit players to that program and help them go on to other parts of their life. And this is the one thing that I'm starting to wrestle with, because I do think that it is misconstrued a lot. I don't want to say I support, but I understand that Dabo wants to make sure that the academics are not totally eliminated from this. And I understand that draws a lot of eye roll from people who believe that because of the widespread evidence of fraudulent classes, fake curriculums, things that have been established in order to allow college football players to essentially get through their time in college without having to experience the academic rigors that the rest of the university population gets to. But there's something about the university experience that I do think has value. And there's something about the university experience that allows for the college football player to have that full, like, go to a classroom that doesn't just have college football players. You know, like, meet new people that are outside of the place where you grew up and went to high school, and that are not on your football team. And those experiences do have a lot of value. And so I don't know quite how to wrestle with this, but I think that I too hope that, if we move forward to a place where the universities are paying players, not just allowing them to get name, image, and likeness, but taking a shaving off of those millions of dollars that are coming in from the television revenue and allowing that to be dispersed to the athletes that are helping generate that revenue. If we get to that place, I do hope that we are allowing for college football players, 18 to 22-year-olds, to still have those experiences of choosing to go to classes, of choosing to engage with the university populace, because I think that has like a human value that I agree I don't want to see taken away from the college football experience.
Yeah, and Dabo even mentions that too. Like in one of the answers, like he talks about the importance of the education, but he also uses like the word connectivity. That is kind of like what you're saying, just to be able to interact and develop those kind of connections with other people at the school. Because like, you can always counter it saying we can't pretend, like coaches are pretending that the education matters when a lot of these kids are funneled into like majors that really don't mean much of anything. It's just, these are classes you could pass so we can keep you eligible. And for some players, like guys with NFL futures, they do that and there's a sense to it. But on the other end, getting a college degree, like how many of people do you know have a college degree who actually work in the field for where they got their degree? So like what was more important to them? Going to college, getting the degree, getting the experience from it, and making the connections to help move on post-college into your adult life, or being a specific degree and then working in that specific category. So there is a value to getting a college degree, whether you think that degree is valuable or whether you want to compare it to what other degrees are. But I know some people with law degrees. I know some people with English degrees who are all very much in the same boat right now and doing the same exact job. So again, what does that degree really mean other than, hey, you met certain requirements to get this piece of paper?
When Dabo's really starting to take aim at like you mentioned, there's no rules with NIL. Why do you think that he has targeted the name, image, and likeness? Again, it's something that he says multiple times in this interview, that he supports NIL, and he even talked about, he said, Clemson football has 1 million followers, or one of 3 programs in the country to have 1 million followers. They have, some of these guys on the team have a bigger platform right now than they will ever have in their entire lives. And so he supports them being able to profit off of that. Do you think that it is the recruiting, the inducement side of this? like what are going to be the pieces that you think he's hoping are going to end up being changed?
I think Dabo's fine with NIL. I think he would just like there to be some sort of uniform rules. And that's another thing he talks about in the interview too, is how he thinks that we're moving in a direction where, 50 schools are kind of going to break off and form their own college football league, and they're going to play by their own rules. Because as he said, it's like Alabama and Middle Tennessee exist in entirely different worlds. You can't ask them to play by the same rules when they are doing such drastically different things and competing for such drastically different things. And I think that his ultimate hope is not so much don't pay the players, just give them degrees, which is how it's going to be painted by a lot of people. I even saw in our own comments, people who have been listening to the show are summarizing what we're saying is Dabo hates NIL, which is so far off of what we've been saying. But I think that it's just a situation where he just wants he wants to know what the rules are, and he wants everybody to be playing by the same rules. And he doesn't want it to be, we're just going to pay these kids to be here, school be damned. He wants them to still incentivize education while also paying the players what they can get and what they would be worth, which I don't think is a terrible thing. I think that's kind of what most people want. It's just he didn't say it in the same exact way that everybody else is saying it. So we have to jump down his throat. Personally, if I'm a Clemson fan, the most problematic thing I read in that interview was Dabo's approach to the transfer portal, which here's the quote, because he was asked, what about your taking transfers? And he said, quote, my transfer portal is right there in that locker room, because if I'm constantly going out every year and adding guys from the transfer portal, I'm telling all those guys in that locker room that I don't believe in them and I don't think they can play. We're also not doing our job as coaches and recruiters if we're bringing in a bunch of transfers. I agree. You probably, if you're a development program, you don't want to be bringing in 50 transfers a year, but I still think that, you should probably be pay a little more attention to the transfer portal than that, especially seeing yesterday, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about this later too, a couple former highly rated recruits from Georgia, offensive linemen, hit the transfer portal. You know who has a need on the offensive line?
I do.
I'm saying Clemson maybe should be paying some attention to that transfer portal right now, because there might be something in there they could use.
Do you think that there is a way to, again, the screenshots, the way that it took off on Twitter and social media, do you think that there's a way that everybody's going to be able to come together on this, where universities could be paying players in a new world of college football while also having the ability for them to go to classes, be students, and obtain an education? Do you see that from those who support the pay the players initiative, they almost want them as employees, where the only thing they do is show up to the university and play football and then move on with the rest of their life? Like, I don't know how to blend those two, because I support the idea that they make some share off of the millions of dollars of television revenue, which they are not even now in the name, image, and likeness era. But at the same time, I don't know how to bridge that gap right now.
I have no idea. Yeah, it's just hard to think that anybody right now is going to be able to solve this, because it's a really complicated issue. And what complicates it even further is that there's 100 years of history of doing it a different way. So as we've seen, not just in sports, but just in the country in general, anytime we do something for a long time and then it dawns on us that we've probably been doing it wrong and we need to change it and we need to figure out a new way to do it, takes a really long time for us to go through that process and figure it out. So which is why I think, kind of to what Dabo was saying, the most likely outcome, I would say, of what the future looks like is that certain schools and conferences just break off on their own to form their own thing and just start from quote unquote scratch about how they want to do things, how they want to implement things, and how they want to regulate things. And I think that is a very likely outcome, to which we could see the Power Five conferences just forming a new quote unquote college football league.
Would we have to draw straws on who does the live blogs for the minor league? How does the CBSSports.com team get broken up when we're deciding live blogs for the major league college football and the minor league college football on a Saturday?
I will say, as a college football fan, I don't think it would be good, because I do think it would pretty much just kind of relegate the other conferences to like FCS status, which I know some people really like FCS football, but there's not a whole lot of people who pay super close attention to FCS football. But as far as an employee and a career perspective, it would be nice to have to concentrate on a lot fewer teams than we're supposed to already, just as far as managing our time.
Yeah. Well, 100. Listen, try them 358 that they're doing over there in college basketball. I'm just glad that by the time I transition over there from my little moonlighting 3 months, they've already whittled down the teams that matter to like 120. It's a little bit more of a manageable thing. But and to your point on the transfer portal, and this falls in line kind of with my reaction to a lot of this. I'm not surprised that that's what Dabo thinks.
No.
You want to know why I'm not surprised? Because the man hasn't made an outside hire. He lost his offensive coordinator, his defensive coordinator, his offensive line coach transitioned to an off-field role. His defensive line coach left with his defensive coordinator. And the man just looked around the building and was like, all right, Adam, Wes, all right, y'all, come on down. Come on down the slide.
In a strange way, Dabo is a victim of Clemson's success in that if he was doing everything he's done at Clemson, minus the national titles and all that stuff, but at like a mid-level Power 5 kind of development program, we would talk about what a great coach he is. But since he's doing these things that kind of go against the grain of what you're supposed to do to compete for national championships for a program that has won national championships, everybody's kind of like, what the hell is this guy doing? He's an idiot. So it's a weird balance. Like, I don't know if Clemson can continue competing for national titles in the transfer portal and NIL era if it keeps trying to do things the more traditional developmental program, develop the human kind of approach that it has taken. But I don't know if maybe that's the most important thing to Dabo Swinney.
He did also have some lines in there that were like, hey, we're not going to win it every year. You were talking about like some quotes that might jump out to a Clemson fan. Like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, look, we're not going to win the ACC every year. We just need to consistently put ourselves in position so that we could win the ACC every year. And after we won the ACC every single season from 2015 to 2021, I imagine that there is a sub-generation, not an entire generation, but a sub-generation of Clemson fans that's like, well, what do you mean we're not going to win it every year?
I thought that's what we did. I thought we were the greatest program of all time.
Yeah, I thought that's what we did. Okay, we will get more to Clemson's actual spring game coming up in just a little bit and some of our thoughts there and what it might mean for 2021. But real quickly, some other news items. First, a little bit of a Pac-12 stunner here. I saw some Oregon fans jump in the chat. You should celebrate because five-star offensive lineman Josh Connerly on CBS Sports HQ Friday night announced his commitment to Oregon. And why is that particularly significant from the Pac-12 perspective? Because I was going through maybe 2 days before the announcement, and I was looking at that, 24/7 Sports crystal ball, and all of a sudden it's like USC, 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 and all of these predictions had all come in, in the last 2 weeks or so. I think like March 28th or 29th, somewhere around the end of the month. And normally, if you're tracking recruiting trends, and the 24/7 Sports obviously is the best, the crystal ball is fantastic and a good way to understand the way that things are trending for a particular recruit and their decision. I'm kind of like, yeah, Lincoln secured the bag. Yeah, like this staff has it together. They've been killing it in the transfer portal. They went out and they were able to get a couple of those Oklahoma commits to come with them. They're about to get this five-star offensive lineman. Then Connerly picks Oregon and not USC. To me, if you're an Oregon fan, this gives you so much excitement that Dan Lanning is bringing the recruiting chops, and his staff is going to be able to maintain what has been an upward trajectory ever since Mario Cristobal took over in terms of Oregon's ability to land the best recruits in the country.
Yeah, I think that is the biggest takeaway for me too. It's not Connerly himself, because I mean, he's a very good player. He's an offensive lineman, but it's not like, oh, this is the guy that's going to make sure we win national titles. I just think that for Lincoln to come to USC, and as you were going over all that that momentum that he had built up both in the recruiting trail and in the transfer portal, and then all those crystal balls of Connerly going to USC, for Lanning to show up at Oregon and to kind of flip him based on the expectation of what everybody thought was going to happen, to come to Oregon. And now Oregon, I think, it has the #1 class, I think, in 24/7's composite rankings for the Pac-12 for 2023. To me, it's like, all right, cool. because that means there's still going to be another program in the Pac-12 for USC to kind of go up against. Because I also think that one of the problems the Pac-12 has had recent years is while USC has been down, like they had every year, there seemed to be like one team that was kind of pretty good. It wasn't really playoff good because they would always trip up and lose to somebody and it would kind of destroy their hopes. But there was never really kind of the enemy to go against, the competitor, the rival. And I think that having a very strong Oregon in the north and a very strong USC in the south is only going to mean good things for the entire Pac-12 going forward, especially when you look at the programs like Utah, Washington, all these other schools that have shown an ability to win, UCLA, if they can then keep the pace that they're at while those two are kind of, I don't want to say dominating, but leading the way, it's just good for the Pac-12 in general to have that happening. So I think that if you're a Ducks fan, you're pretty excited because you did lose Mario to Miami, but Dan Lanning coming in and doing this with Connerly kind of just says, okay, yeah, well, all the recruiting kind of prowess we built up under Mario, it's not going anywhere. We're still going to be able to do it.
Yeah, a lot of credit goes to Lanning for his coaching hires. The staff that he put together plays a big role in this. And another item of clarification, I know it seems crazy to be talking about this on April 11th, but Josh Connolly's from the 2022 recruiting class, which means that he will be a part of that program starting this fall. I need to do a hard review of Oregon's offensive line. I'm just going to guess that we're not expecting him to come in and take over a starter's role, having not been in spring practice, but he will become part of the Ducks program for year one of Dan Lanning. And without a doubt, and he does, to your point, gives them the best 2022 recruiting class in the Pac-12 and gives them a class that now nationally ranks in the top 16. So that's awesome stuff for Lanning and great stuff for everybody on his everybody on his staff.
Yeah, no, it's reason to be excited about the Pac-12 in 2022, which is all I'm taking from it. But yeah, I think Connerly kind of committing this late into spring. I mean, we've talked about it before in the last episode, how offensive linemen and defensive linemen tend to need some seasoning before you can really just kind of fully throw them out there. But I wouldn't be surprised if Connerly's on that Ducks offensive line as a mainstay by the time the season ends.
Good thing to keep an eye on. Speaking of five-star offensive linemen, the Georgia Bulldogs have two former five-star offensive linemen that have entered the transfer portal. Dogs 247 was the first to be on this as Amarius Mims, who was from the 2021 recruiting class, a 6'7", 330-pound tackle with a 7'1" wingspan. Top-rated recruit in that 2021 class. He is, for my money, the headliner of this group. Clay Webb, though, also a former five-star prospect. He was from the 2019 cycle. He is also in the recruiting class as well. These are just for Mims, the tackle position. He was not going to see the field right now. Lauren McClendon and Broderick Jones, they've got basically entrenched players at both starting tackle positions. He got a little bit of game action during his freshman season in 2021. Clay Webb did not play a single game in 2021 and had very limited action in 2020. So for Mims, I see this as being, you hate to lose somebody with a first-round NFL draft type ceiling and first-round NFL draft type projection. But when you're recruiting blue-chip offensive linemen every single year, I tend to think that my thought is this is the cost of doing business.
Yes.
When you recruit this well along the lines.
When you look at, like, there's different ways you have to look at Georgia, and it's similar. Like when you look at some teams that get a five-star QB in their recruiting class every year, at least two of those guys will transfer before
Ohio
their
State.
college. Yeah.
Like that's the example that I think we've got going right now.
Yeah. So you look at Ohio State, you think their quarterbacks, their wide receivers, they're going to have guys transfer because they just have so many five-star guys. Georgia, they don't have, that's just how their offensive line and their defensive line is. They have so many guys that are really good players who are just not going to be able to crack the rotation or the depth chart once other guys get established, barring injury, and they're too good to want to sit there and be reserve roles when they know they can go start somewhere else and get to the NFL. I mean, just look at what happened with Jermaine Johnson last year. Transferred from Georgia to Florida State. Suddenly one of the best edge rushers in the ACC, probably going to be a first-round pick. Wasn't a problem for Georgia. Wasn't a
They
problem
won
for
the
Jermaine
title.
Johnson. Yeah, it's that situation. So like these guys that are entering the transfer portal, it's like, oh wow, your initial reaction might be, oh wow, Georgia's losing a couple key players. It's like, no, Georgia's offensive line is probably going to be fine, and a couple other schools are going to benefit from Georgia recruiting the offensive line so well, in that these guys are now going to be available, and you can add them to your team. And it's like we were joking about earlier, like Dabo Swinney needs help on the offensive line. I hope he's in the portal talking to both these guys right now.
Yeah, it's 11 players since the end of last season have entered the transfer portal. A few are undecided. Among those undecided, JT Daniels, as we will continue to await that decision. I'm sure it is coming in the near future. One more little bit of news. Wanted to pick your brain on this one. So Sean Clifford has launched his own NIL agency.
Yep.
And I've got to think that this comes from all of the, all of the exposure that Sean Clifford got here on the Cover 3 podcast, as we discussed on the mailbag episode last Thursday about whether Clifford was going to be the guy. And I couldn't help but feel like all of us left a Penn State fan thinking that, man, Clifford might be okay. We're not as down on Clifford in terms of our discussion of him and what we expect from the veteran QB ahead in 2022. He had to have listened to the Cover 3 podcast, as I'm sure Sean Clifford does, and be like, man, I tell you what, I need to find a way to monetize all this exposure I've gotten on the Cover 3 podcast. What do you think about the entrepreneurial spirit that we've seen from Penn State's returning starting quarterback?
Well, first off, I hope we're getting equity in the company. Second, I think it's really smart. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, wow, he's going to make billions of dollars for some kids, because but I think you just look at the way things work, like players can cash in on NIL, but the long-term money is always not getting money quickly. It's just kind of being in charge of things. So if this company works and he's able to kind of navigate it to where he's not just helping himself immediately, but helping other players and kind of forming something, there could be a chance for him to make some actual kind of real money out of this long term. So I'm not saying it's going to work. Odds are probably very much against it, as it is with any kind of startup company that anybody starts, but I do like the idea, and I think it's a good idea, and I hope it does work for him, because I think that'd be awesome.
I think that if we want to target fan bases and college towns where you can generate some real passion, if Sean Clifford likes living in State College, PA, and hanging around the Penn State football program, the man could have incredible networking Saturdays in that crisp button down, just in the business casual look, walking through Happy Valley, just shaking some hands, connecting some dots, helping people get involved. Again, the Penn State fan base, the college town atmosphere of State College, there's too much working in the favor of Sean Clifford that I would not necessarily give to many current players who might be looking at this as a potential off-ramp, because Sean Clifford's probably not going to play in the NFL. He might give it a shot, but this could be an incredible bridge into his professional business career if he's able to make it work.
No, it's like I said, it's a really good idea. It's like, don't just be the product, sell the product. There's more money selling products than there are in being them.
Yeah, his shout out to Mark in the chat. He's not going to the NFL, he's going to the NIL. That's how he's going pro, baby. So congratulations to Sean Clifford, and yes, we will be in touch for Cover 3's equity stake, because we clearly put you on to this brilliant idea. Coming up on the other side, time to take a look at some of the action from the spring games across the country. We'll discuss Nebraska, Florida State, Auburn, Clemson, and more next.
This was it. We're back.
Come on, be my baby tonight.
Julie has a controversial history with many of us.
I'm not trying to mess with that lady.
My sexuality
made you feel uncomfortable.
That door is open and I can leave.
I'm either with you 100% or I'm not with you at all.
You didn't apologize.
I hate you. Why did I come back here?
The Real World Homecoming, New Orleans. Streaming April 20th exclusively on Paramount+.
And we are back.
Do you remember that time on the challenge when Julie tried to kill Veronica?
No, I never got to that. I was about to say Seattle, New Orleans, and Hawaii is and I don't remember if I got them in the right order, but that's my peak we for those on the audio, we just had on the video forum, we just had a nice preview at Real World New Orleans Homecoming, which is available on Paramount Plus, where you should absolutely already be a subscriber. It's where I got all my Masters feeds, and it's where we'll be watching the Champions League coming up this week with leg 2 of the quarterfinals on Tuesday and Wednesday. Shout out to the K Galazzo pod. Go to them for all of your podcast needs for the Champions League and elsewhere. But that's
you can just get it here. Bud and Danny aren't here. We could do the next 45 minutes discussing it if you want to.
Smash that like button if you want us to just veer off into second leg Champions League takes. But that was my sort of peak real world time, was in that New Orleans, Seattle, Hawaii, Tech and Ruthie.
Yeah. The slap.
Yeah. But so Julie at the challenge tried to kill Veronica.
There was one season of the challenge. They were on like like some zip line things where they had to go across. Whatever. If you've watched the challenge, you could probably picture it in your head. But like she was trying to undo Veronica's zip line to slow her down. And like it was hilarious because Veronica was literally screaming like, she could die. This woman is trying to kill me. And Julie's just like, I was just trying to win. You gotta respect that competitive fire. I'll kill to win this competition in the 10 grand. I don't care.
For 10 grand.
I don't care how many people have to die. I want that 10K, baby.
Come on. You need to find a new business. You can make more money than 10K if you're willing to go to those slings. All right, let's turn our attention to what some of the headlines coming out of the weekend. First, let's start at I had Nebraska at the top of my list because the best 3-9 team in the country, really the best 3-9 team in college football history, is entering into a fascinating season because there is all of the close losses. There is how competitive Nebraska was, even in that as they went 3-9. But we've also got a lot of turnover. Adrian Martinez is out the door. We get in Casey Thompson from Texas. We get in Chubba Purdy from Florida State. Both of those quarterbacks have seen action. My read on it is that Casey Thompson probably has a leg up, but the whole offense in general is still trying to get used to new offensive coordinator Mark Whipple. They had one of the modified scoring, so you couldn't really or all of our spring games were either modified scoring, weird 40s and 30s type scores, or it was 15-7 or 10-9 or something like that. What's your gauge for success, and how do you feel about the way that Scott Frost has presented his Nebraska team coming out of spring?
Did anybody suffer a serious injury? No. Okay, spring game was a success. Like that's the way obviously Nebraska fans, the takeaway I got from it was they're not thrilled because the offense wasn't good and everybody's kind of worried. And I get it because you've had how many seasons of subpar performance in a row, so you're already kind of on edge. But like the first half of that game, they were playing two-hand touch, which is going to be to the defense's benefit if you don't actually have to tackle the guy. So it's hard for an offense to be successful. But like you were saying, like you shouldn't have had high expectations for the offense in the spring to begin with, because you've got new quarterbacks coming in to replace Adrian Martinez, who's been the starter there for like 30 years at this point. And then you've got new offensive coordinator coming in, installing a new playbook, and everybody kind of learning new rules and new plays. To think that they're going to come into the spring game after a couple weeks of practice and just completely ball out and perfectly execute everything is asking far too much. So I wouldn't be worried about it. Now, yeah, you would have loved to have seen everybody come out and play super well and just put up fantastic numbers that you could point to for the next 5 months, being like, yeah, we're going 10-2. Did you see him in the spring game? He threw for 300 yards. But remember Charlie Brewer last year in the spring game, Chip?
15 for 15.
Yeah, he was great. He was perfect. And then what happened?
Got benched for Cam Rising by midseason.
And Utah got a lot better afterwards. So again, when it comes to spring games, my ultimate goal is always practice game. Don't let anybody get hurt. And if they do get hurt, have it be something where they'll be back and ready to play for practice in the summer.
The thing that really stood out to me as Scott Frost was detailing sort of his takeaways after the spring game was how he's here. I've got it right here. with spring ball finished early, I guess, compared to their typical calendar, what are you expecting? He said, we're pushing everything up a little bit. The season is pushed up. We're going to push summer conditioning up a little bit. We need to work on X's and O's and stuff, particularly on offense where there's new stuff. We didn't show any of it today, but new stuff we're doing that the kids just need more reps at, and we need to be a little tighter with everything we're doing. It's going to be a good mix going forward of a sped up summer conditioning and a little more work with coaches when we are allowed to. I would never suggest. Hasn't Scott Frost gotten in trouble for doing too many practices? That's just off the top of my mind. I know that anyway. I would never allege that somebody was breaking the NCAA coaching and contact rules. But what I took away from Scott Frost and his assessment of where Nebraska's at is like, yeah, look, it was good to get out there in front of the fans. It was good to get out there and compete. But man, like in terms of the books, the learning, the teaching, we are so far behind from where we need to be. Casey Thompson probably has the lead. Scott Frost even said Chubba Purdy's a little bit farther behind. What do you have any like early expectations or thoughts? Have you decided where you're going to land on Nebraska when we have to start doing those win totals discussions in 3 months?
Depends where the win total is, but I would say they're going to go to a bowl. That's my big prediction for Nebraska in 2022. They're going bowling, baby. If you do not improve on the greatest 3-9 team of all time by at least 3 wins, then what are you even doing here? We got to go from being the greatest 3-9 team to just a perfectly acceptable 6-6 team.
All right, let's turn our attention to the ACC first with the orange and white game, where in the post-game press conference, like Dabo Swinney said, DJ is our starter. He hasn't done anything to not be our starter. He's going to enter the offseason as the starting quarterback. Neither offense was great. Clemson fans, who were always going to be excited about the new thing, seem to be a little bit more excited about Cade Klubnik. What's your sense of what we should do with Clemson after the defense totally dominated the offense? Does that mean, hey, guess what? Clemson's defense has been one of the best in the country for many years in a row now. They were awesome last year. They're going to be awesome again, and don't be so concerned about it? Or do you think that the fact that the passing game wasn't really clicking all that much, and again, 20 scholarship players were out, including multiple offensive linemen. I mean, they had Bo Collins and EJ Williams, 2 guys that could be starters alongside Joseph Nagata, were coaches. They were like player coaches. Will Shipley and Kobe Pace, your top 2 running backs, they weren't a part of it. Do you buy into Dabo's support of DJ as QB1 heading into the offseason?
Yeah, I think that, just to go back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show, the way Dabo runs his program and his vision for his program and the identity of what they do, it's not that Cade can't win the job, but we've seen it before. Like when Trevor Lawrence first showed up, or when, Deshaun Watson first showed up, like he lets the veteran guys who had the job, he gives them every single chance that he can to hold on to the job. Kelly Bryant got, he started the season when Trevor Lawrence came on. He would get some snaps as a backup. And then once Trevor was out playing Kelly Bryant, they made the move. I think we'll probably see something similar this year. DJ will start the year as Clemson's starting quarterback. And if he's not playing well, and Cade Klubnik's been practicing well and impressing the coaches, we're going to see him get some series. And if he plays well in live action and DJ's not playing well, we'll see them make that change. But it's really hard to take anything away from what we saw because, as you said, like the defense dominated the spring game because they were missing half their offensive line. Like it's really hard to block a good defense when you're using your backup offensive lineman and you don't have a great offensive line to begin with. So of course the defense was going to dominate it. And that's kind of something Dabo talked about too, where he's like, it's not so much DJ as much as we have to put help around him and help DJ play better. And there wasn't a whole lot of help for him in that spring game. There wasn't a whole lot of help for him last year on the field as far as targets in the receiving game. And I think that is something that is probably, if I'm a Clemson fan, obviously the quarterback battle is going to be what draws my attention. But I think what's going to be more important to your offense is what's going on everywhere else.
The Brandon Marcello of 24/7 Sports has a column up on right now, sort of kicking around the idea that we're talking about DJU, but with the way that this Clemson team is built, with so much talent elsewhere, especially when it gets healthy, that there is a Georgia-like path. And I hope I'm not like misconstruing this entirely, but I liked the idea, so I wanted to give him credit. I'm not going to lift your idea, Brandon, and bring it to the Cover 3 podcast without shouting you out, but I did think it was interesting to consider if there is a Georgia-like path where you don't need DJ to be a Heisman Trophy contender to be able to go out there and win, where if he is a game manager and is doing so with a little bit more confidence, few less turnovers. We already know he's lost 20 pounds and he's trying to have more balance when it comes to making some plays on the run. Like, what if they just strip this entire playbook down and make it really simple? And in my mind, I was like, oh, this is the like SEC in 2013 or SEC in 2011 kind of model, which I think Dabo might be okay with, where they're just going to run the ball, make easy throws, and play hellacious defense, something that I do think could win them an ACC championship. Do you think that that could be able to fare well on the national stage as well?
No. I think I agree. I think that if they do take that approach, they could win the ACC, but I don't think if they get to the playoff, they're going to be able to beat whoever they run into in the playoff playing that way. Because while it worked for Georgia's defensive depth, I think, as far as talent-wise, is far greater than Clemson's. And I think that while Clemson has very good players on defense, I don't think they run 2 to 3 deep at every spot with 5-star talent and kind of being able to put 11 guys on the field at a time who will be in the NFL. And I think that is the one reason why Georgia was able to get away with it. That said, I do think that from a talent perspective, DJU has a much higher ceiling than what Stetson Bennett was able to give that Georgia offense. So at least if they put in a position where they need to score points, maybe they'll be able to overcome it with their offense with DJ compared to what Georgia could do with Stetson. But no, I don't think Clemson has enough horses on defense to be able to just follow that Georgia blueprint and think it can win a national title doing so.
Florida State held its garnet and gold spring game on Saturday. Our own Danny Cannell was one of the two primary assistants. He and Pete Bolware were on one side. Bryant McFadden, who was with BMAC?
It was Bolware and Danny on one team, and BMAC and oh god, now I can't remember who BMAC's assistant was.
But is Danny on the hot seat?
He should be. Didn't he get shut out?
Yeah, that's what I heard, is that DK got shut out. It's very difficult because the Florida State offense totaled 38 points in the spring game, but it was EJ Manuel.
There we go.
Yeah, EJ Manuel was with BMAC. So the offense totaled 38 points, but the passing game wasn't all that great. Now there were multiple offensive linemen that were out or limited, and there's some other ways to look at how this performance ends up looking in terms of Florida State and the expectations. But any criticism for our guy DK, or any thoughts on where Florida State is at coming out of the spring?
I'm just saying, he was talking a lot of stuff last week about how BMAC was telling him his defensive game plan. And he's like, all right, well, now I know how I pick him apart. Didn't look like it worked, Danny. And now you're not here today, afraid to show your face to the Cover 3 faithful, to coming home with your tail tucked between your legs. I just don't think Danny is allowed to criticize Florida State this season because of this. I just think that if Florida State plays poorly, Danny has to say, well, they did better than I would have done. That's going to be the FSU minute every week.
It was a cold, windy day, but 30,000 in attendance coming off 4 losing seasons was something that is they think is a positive. Bud mentioned was a positive. Super windy, not that the passing offense looked all that great, but Danny's team did get shut out. Danny followed up. He said, I can't make it today. I'm traveling to New York City for our showtime. It's probably good because the play calling was a fireable offense.
Danny just kept calling halfback dive. That's all. It's like not enough play action, not enough shots. Just he's too conservative because of the wind. You could tell it was scaring him off. Or maybe he just didn't have faith in his QBs, Chip. Maybe that's the problem.
He also posted his play call sheets on Twitter.
Yes, which is I mean, I appreciate it. I don't know if it's the best strategy for coaches.
I mean, that's almost like you. What's the old joke? It's like I worked on this story for 4 months and he just ...
He just tweeted it out.
Yeah, it's the WikiLeaks investigation would have been solved if Danny Cannell was just there sharing on Twitter what the play call sheets were. A couple of actual we love Danny, and it's too bad the play calling didn't work out for him. But a couple of actual thoughts on Florida State and where we're at right now. I thought that Micah Pittman is a great addition to this team, and Jared Verse is a great addition to this team. These are transfer portal additions, and based on where the roster was at from the team that I saw last year, Mike Norvell and his staff were going to have to use the transfer portal. Again, Micah Pittman, wide receiver, Jared Verse, a defensive end. Jared Verse is not going to be Jermaine Johnson. I believe it's either Bud or Danny said that on this podcast a little while back, but still somebody that is. Oh yeah, we talked about him, the potential
in the portal draft,
in the transfer portal All-American team.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I don't think there's any real surprise, but this is definitely Jordan Travis as QB1. And then
looks that way, yeah.
But there is somewhat of a limitation on this passing attack. Any other thoughts on Florida State?
No, Danny and Bud aren't here. We don't need to talk about them. That's just how it is. No, seriously. I mean, I don't think we really learned anything new about Florida State based on the spring game. We just learned that if Cover 3 does start its own college football program, Danny should be the head coach and he should hire an offensive coordinator and somebody else to call plays.
Yeah. Bud's OC, you're DC, and I'm special teams.
Yeah, there we go. Boom.
There we go. It's gonna be windy in Tallahassee. Shout out to Short Round. Okay, so we've hit Nebraska, we've hit Florida State, we've hit Clemson. Any other big? Oh, Auburn.
No surprises. Again, it's like we've been talking about all spring. We don't know. They're not going to know who the QB is until fall. Like we're probably not going to know who Auburn's starting quarterback is until they're taking the very first snap on that first Saturday of the season. So if you went into the spring game thinking, all right, somebody's going to step forward and separate themselves from the rest of the pack, you were just setting yourself up for disappointment. That's all.
So Zach Calzada is a little bit limited. We weren't really going to have a good idea of where he's at. TJ Finley did take the first team reps, but there's still a long way to go in that. Did you see the snowstorm in Lexington, Kentucky?
Yes. That's how football is supposed to be played. Welcome to the real world, SEC. So
are you a Will Levis believer? Because when we did our Heisman draft, one of the references for research was to look at the Heisman odds board, even though, we even said in our analysis, more often than not, the players at the top of the Heisman odds board don't end up being real contenders for the Heisman Trophy. And I was surprised at where Will Levis was listed on that odds board. Kentucky fans are excited and, 7 for 8 for, 80 some odd yards. But do you think that Kentucky's offense will be, with a new offensive line coach, with a new offensive coordinator, do you think that they've got the ability to be a difference-making side of the ball?
No.
This is a Mark Stoops Kentucky team where we will be winning at the line of scrimmage and then figuring it out as best we can around that.
Yeah, I believe in Will Levis being good enough for Kentucky to get where they want to go and to achieve its goals for where they want to be at the end of the season. I do not believe in Will Levis or the Kentucky offense as being something that's going to go to a new level and raise the program to where they're winning 12 games and competing with Georgia for the SEC. No, which is, where I don't think anybody really is thinking that, but I don't think that Florida or Kentucky's offense is just going to make this giant leap and become this explosive unit when we've seen far too much evidence to the contrary in recent years where Kentucky is kind of becoming what Mark Stoops, when you look at what Iowa is, Stoops is from that same line. I just feel like Kentucky is kind of taking that same approach where they're never going to be extremely explosive on offense. They're just going to be good enough to win games. Any other games or teams that we haven't mentioned here that
hit your radar?
No.
That's honesty. Any Champions League second leg thoughts?
Yeah, I would take Bayern over 2.5 because Valerio shut them out in the first leg, and that is the first time in 24 matches overall in which Bayern had been shut out, and the first time in 30 Champions League matches that Bayern had been shut out. I just feel like Bayern coming back home for this second leg is probably going to try to make a point, saying, "Okay, well, you got us the first time, buddy, but we're going to score a lot of goals." So
Lewandowski anytime goal.
Yeah, I would rather just take Bayern over 2.5.
Feels a little bit better. Is there a corner picks going up?
Yeah, I was working on it today. It'll be going up later today. Actually, it might be up now. I don't know. I turned it in, so
Keep your eyes peeled for that. And of course, all Champions League action can be seen on Paramount Plus. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. We will be back with you Wednesday. Tom, thank you very much.
thank you.